Hey everyone, if you're anything like me, you've been following the situation in southern Australia very closely, especially in Melbourne. It's a total clampdown there. Just seems like a total hellhole. Dystopian nightmare. Overreaction big time to COVID. So this came across my feed and I was immediately worried. So I wanted to bring to your attention what I found. I haven't completely fleshed out entirely what's going on, but I think this is enough to make a presentation as we collectively try to sort this out. So, first off, this came across my desk. Just this screenshot here. COVID-19 Emergency Response Act 2020, South Australia, 25A, removal of children. An authorized officer may, for the purpose of ensuring compliance with any direction under that section, remove a child from any premises, place, vehicle, or vessel to a place of residence of the child or to a hospital or quarantine facility as the authorized officer thinks fit, and may, in doing so, use such force as is reasonably necessary. Child means a person under 18 years of age. So I went to start looking this up, and the first thing I found was this. The bill was introduced on 4/7, April the 7th, and it is called COVID-19 Emergency Response Act. So I'm hoping I'm reading these dates right. It looks like it was April the 7th, had some activity, and then it worked its way all the way through both houses of Parliament for South Australia, and it, quote, ascended, which is the term where it goes to the governor, and apparently the governor approved it on 4/28, April the 28th. Now, this is a very concerning bill, which has since become law, I believe, although they do say it's temporary. They wash their hands of any liability. And why wouldn't they? Why do we allow politicians to write in exemptions for themselves for any liability? It's ridiculous. So I want to go through the highlights here, but spoiler alert, there's another bill that came up later. So the secondary bill is called COVID-19 Emergency Response Further Measures Amendment. And this was a shorter bill which had within it the removal of children clause that we just covered. But it's kind of an amendment onto this one that we're about to cover right here. So basically, just to summarize what we're about to go through in this document, for as long as needed for COVID, the South Australia government gives themselves a bunch of extra powers and immunities from liability as long as they say they're operating in good faith. And seemingly they even give themselves protection if they fail to relinquish their new powers. And how often have we seen that, where governments in times of trouble give themselves new powers, the people lose rights, and the expectation is that that'll be reversed once everything goes back to normal, but those laws stand. Look at Patriot Act, for instance. USA Freedom Act. So the main thing in here is that they created a new position called the authorizing officer. It's a very powerful position that can make unilateral decisions. So let's skip to page 20. I haven't had a chance to go through everything here. Page 20, interpretation. Authorizing officer. This is the new position. They define here the term mentally incapacitated person, protected person. This is a very interesting one. I don't think I really found ever a good definition. It says here a mentally incapacitated person, but also this major definition here references another definition that I couldn't find. So what is a protected person? I'm not sure, to be honest. Maybe somebody could let me know in the comments. It does say here, it references this other act, Guardianship and Administration Act 1993, but I couldn't find a definition within that act. They also have what they call a tribunal, which is shorthand for this longer name of the tribunal, South Australian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. And then you can see here it's defining what a guardian is, and then it defines usual place of residence. So if you can kind of guess where they're going by what they're defining here. Right after that, they go into Section 2, detention. The authorizing officer or the tribunal can detain people. And it says that detention can be conditional or unconditional. So I'm not even sure what conditional versus unconditional means, but it doesn't seem to be a limitation. They're actually greenlighting both approaches. We'll see this defined further on, but apparently they can detain people for up to 28 days. They can even extend it if they want, which is terrifying. So here's the part about the authorizing officer. Basically, the authorizing officer is appointed on terms and conditions determined by the minister. The authorizing officer is subject to the direction and control of the minister. So it's a puppet for the minister. The appointment of the authorizing officer may be terminated by the minister at any point, on any grounds the minister thinks fit. And then this is interesting. They can delegate their powers, and they can give directions. And a person must not, without reasonable excuse, it says, refuse or fail to comply with a direction of the authorizing officer. It says here you can have up to a $20,000 fine, and businesses, what they call body corporates, can face up to $75,000 in penalty. Now, they have an option. If you don't want to go through the whole process and face possibly the maximum penalty, you can pay the expiation fee. It means the act of making amends or reparation for guilt or wrongdoing, atonement. So basically, you're admitting guilt. Let me pull this up. If you search expiation fee, rather than being prosecuted, you can just pay a fee. Essentially is what that says. Or you can roll the dice and see what the court deals you. And that fee is $2,000 for a person or $5,000 for a corporation. So imagine you get in trouble, you don't follow this authorizing officer's order, be you a citizen or a police officer that's supposed to do their bidding. You get called up and they say, okay, well, you can either pay this $2,000 or you can roll the dice. And it might be as high as $20,000 if we think you're a bad person. If a corporation is guilty of an offense, each director and the manager of the corporation are guilty of an offense and liable to the same penalty as is prescribed for the principal offense when committed by a natural person, unless the director or the manager proves that they could not, by the exercise of due diligence, have prevented the commission of the offense. Now, this is important. Delegation. So this position is granted tons and tons of power. You see that anyone who doesn't follow this guy's direction can get fined $20,000. Corporation, $75,000. But here's the kicker. This person doesn't have to go around giving everyone directions. They can delegate functions or powers. So delegate means to assign responsibility to somebody else, to give somebody else the power and the responsibility. And it says here, any other specified person or body can be delegated functions or powers. So that's the authorizing officer. Then there are authorized officers. So I guess the authorizing officer authorizes the authorized officers. But these would be the police officers, emergency officers that are authorized, and anybody else authorized by the minister, any people or class of people, or classes of people. Powers of authorized officers to detain protected person. So that would be like police, emergency officials, or anybody else deemed by the government to be an overseer. It says here, subject to this schedule and the regulations, if an authorized officer reasonably believes that a protected person who is detained under this schedule is unlawfully at large. Unlawfully at large, what does that mean? You're outside of your house past 8 o'clock p.m.? And that taking action under this clause is appropriate for a purpose related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the authorized officer may take one or more of the following actions. One or more. Let's see what these possibilities are. Detain and transport the protected person to either the protected person's usual place of residence or a place determined by the authorized officer. Or direct a person to take specified action to prevent the protected person from becoming unlawfully at large. So direct people, boss people around to prevent people from being outside, I guess, or not wearing a mask. Remove to a place the authorized officer thinks fit any person who obstructs or threatens to obstruct the exercise of a power under this schedule. So for daring to threaten to obstruct the power to detain people, you can be removed to a place that the officer thinks fits you. That's terrifying. And finally, as the final option that you can take one or more of, direct insofar as may be reasonably necessary in the circumstances any person to assist in the exercise of any power under this clause. Direct, just boss people around. An authorized officer may be assisted by other persons in exercising a power under this clause. Now, this is an interesting section here. This talks about guardians and their powers. So I guess a guardian can detain their own dependents? I don't know. I don't really understand what's going on in this, but check this out. A guardian of a protected person may, if the guardian reasonably believes that the protected person is unlawfully at large, and to do so is reasonably necessary for a purpose related to the COVID-19 pandemic, do one or more of the following. Detain, using only such force as is reasonably necessary for the purpose. If the protected person is in a place other than the protected person's usual place of residence. And or you take the protected person or cause the protected person to be taken using only such force as is reasonably necessary for the purpose to the protected person's usual place of residence. Take such other action as may be authorized by the tribunal. The tribunal. Now this is an interesting bit here. Prescribed person, we should probably define off the bat. A prescribed person is the person in charge of the operation of the premises, or any other person prescribed by the regulations for the purposes of this paragraph, whatever that means. So these prescribed persons have powers. Subject to this schedule, a prescribed person, in respect of premises at which a protected person usually resides, may, with the approval of the guardian of the protected person, or on the authorization of the authorizing officer or the tribunal, take such steps as may be reasonably necessary to detain the protected person at those premises. That's terrifying. Take such other action as may be authorized by the authorizing officer or tribunal under this schedule. So we'll skip ahead here. Next section, detention of protected persons where no guardian. The authorizing officer may, on an application under this clause, if satisfied that to do so is appropriate for a purpose related to the COVID-19 pandemic, authorize one or more of the following. The detention of a protected person, or B, such other action as the authorizing officer considers appropriate in the circumstances. So anything. So it's detention and or anything else. G. Here's the section about duration of detention. Basically, it says maximum period is 28 days. The tribunal may, on an application under this clause by order, authorize the period for which a protected person is detained under this schedule to be extended by a specified period. So they can just extend it. The tribunal may, in relation to an order under subclause 1, by order, authorize the persons from time to time involved in the care of the protected person during the extended period to use such force as may be reasonably necessary for the purpose of ensuring the proper medical or dental treatment, day-to-day care, and well-being of the protected person. I found this section to be a little bit troubling, to say the least. Tribunal may give advice, direction, or approval. Okay, let's read some more. The authorizing officer, a guardian, or a prescribed person, in relation to prescribed premises, may apply to the tribunal for advice or direction on the exercise of powers under this schedule, or as to the scope of those powers, or for approval to the taking of any action for which the approval of the tribunal is required. And then, what does this mean? A direction given by the tribunal under this clause is binding on the applicant. So if you ask for advice, you have to do whatever they tell you. If they give you a direction, that's binding as well. Is that what that means? Offense to remove protected person from place of detention. This is interesting. A person who, without reasonable excuse, removes a protected person who is being detained in any place under this section from that place, or aids or abets the protected person to leave that place, is guilty of an offense. Maximum penalty $10,000 or a $1,000 expiation fee. Wow. So even if it's consensual, even if you're helping that person escape, you can still be fined and penalized $10,000. Now, this is concerning also Schedule 2. They modify a number of state laws. You can see there's 2 sections in here. So right here, Schedule 3, Related Amendments, Part 1. So they're saying to amend the Emergency Management Act 2004. So that's probably like Australia's FEMA, right? So right here, COVID-19 Crown Immunity. After Section 32, insert the following. Despite any other provision of this act, or any other act or law, no liability attaches to the Crown in respect of any acts or omissions in connection with the exercise or discharge or purported exercise or discharge of a power or function under this act, or the carrying out or purported carrying out of any direction or requirement given or imposed, or purportedly given or imposed in accordance with this act, or any failure to exercise or discharge a power or function under this act in relation to the outbreak of the human disease named COVID-19 within South Australia. I don't know exactly what it means by the Crown and any acts in connection with it or being carried out under its direction. Basically, it sounds like all of the King's men get a license to kill here. You get a license to just follow orders and do all these heinous things to their countrymen. It's awful. And there's another spot in here, let's show you that. They're also amending the South Australian Public Health Act with pretty much the same thing. Immunity for themselves and all of the agents. Next up, we have the snatching of the children possibility in Australia. So after that last bill, the next month, so at the very beginning of June, this amendment, that was first introduced in May, called COVID-19 Emergency Response Further Measures Amendment, was approved by the governor, the executive. That was in 6-2. And that's this bill right here. We talked about this already, but this is very concerning, especially building off that other bill, which we just went through, that was extremely concerning. Basically, they're changing the Development Act 1993 here. Now, we'd probably have to go check exactly the context of what's going on around this section, but I think it's pretty clear just from what they put in here. Let's read it one more time. So it says, in Schedule 2, Clause 1, after paragraph E, insert after Section 25 a new section called Removal of Children. It says, an authorized officer may, for the purpose of ensuring compliance with any direction under that section, remove a child from any premises, place, vehicle, or vessel to a place of residence of the child or to a hospital or quarantine facility as the authorized officer thinks fit, and may in doing so use such force as is reasonably necessary. And this echoes, of course, what we heard the WHO say a few months ago about how at this point the virus mostly spreads in the household and they might have to break up the families. So let me know down below what you think about all of this. I think a lot of these policies are stalking horses, where basically they can make it look like they're doing one thing and then really get their foot in the door. And then they can just pile on and keep adding to the list once they have the vehicle for their despotism. Come on, join us over there. I'm putting out more and more content on the uncensorable platforms like LBRY and BitChute. And Patreon is a great way for us to fund the efforts and to get you guys notified when new content gets released. I'm also going to be bringing back live streams, I promise, in the future. I'm getting all set for that, getting my audio to where I want it. And lots more reports coming, but let me plug the next episode of Beyond the Borders. So we've done 2 episodes so far. I'm going to keep churning them out. The premise of the show is that YouTube wants to keep us cooped up. They want to keep those walls up all around us. They want borderline content to be off limits as they march us down in formation, right? So the premise is we're gonna flee. We're gonna leave the book burners behind, and we're gonna go beyond the borders. So this next episode, I haven't recorded it yet, but I know what I want to talk about. It's gonna be about Newton, Cavendish, Einstein, the moon mission, the whole thing. It's gonna bring up a lot of questions I have. I'm gonna be calling BS on the establishment. I'm going to be saying the emperor is naked AF, and I've put a lot of thought into this, and I'm going to say my piece. So if you want to hear that, make sure you sign up, patreon.com/TimTruth, link down below. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Let me know what you think about this craziness in Australia, the possibility that countries around the world are going to start separating families after they've already divided us and isolated us all so much already. Isn't it crazy that we already have reached these levels of craziness and oppression, but they keep ramping up? Seems like it would be impossible. It seems like the masses would not have it, but they're allowing it to happen. So let me know what you all think. Thanks for watching. I hope you all have a great day.